Okay, so an official welcome to the BCPC advisory meeting, August 17th. I'm Shelby Arthur, and I am the Tri-County Coordinator for the Broadband Consortium Pacific Coast. We have about just under 30 folks here on the call today, and I'm really happy to see a really wide variety of people who are part of the broadband deployment industry, whether you're a consultant or whether you are a designer or whether you work in the construction and maintenance aspects of deploying broadband. We also have a lot of local municipal stakeholders on the call who are staff members who are working with their communities to make sure that the folks that live there are connected. And then we also have a few folks from nonprofits who are here to, share their experience working directly with communities, maybe not necessarily or somewhat in communities that aren't connected, but also in communities that are connected but need a little bit extra help adopting internet and also in learning how to use it, right? Building the digital literacy skills they need to be successful. And then of course our industry partners, broadband providers who are here, who probably serve all of those needs in some way or another. So we'll get started today. A quick overview of our agenda. We have a couple of updates for you. Then we'll go straight into a roundtable discussion, talking about changes to the statewide middle mile map. Those were released the very day after our last BCPC meeting. So we haven't had a chance to talk about them with the folks on the call. Then we'll have a presentation from our partners over at UCSB, who are going to tell us about the digital equity project they're working on. Cox Communications will follow with a presentation about their digital equity plan. And then we will likely have plenty of time for roundtable announcements. We'd love to hear from you about what you're working on, what your questions are, sort of what's going on in the world of our stakeholders. Oops, we'll move forward. If you would please take a moment to drop your name in the chat, your name, the organization you're with, your role in that organization, which area of broadband do you serve, whether that's geographic or whether that's what kind of work you're doing when it comes to broadband and digital skill building. If you could put that information in the chat, that way we can all get to know each other without taking up a lot of time in the meeting to make personal introductions. Thank you very much for putting that in there. We do keep track of who's here so that we can report that to PUC. So we appreciate your participation in the introduction as well. I will take a moment to make sure everyone knows who our BCPC team is. Again, Shelby Arthur, and I am the Tri-County lead, but we also have individuals on the call who are specialized in different county locations or in different aspects of our work. So I'm going to start up in San Luis Obispo. Michael, you want to give a really short introduction for yourself?
Yeah, just hello. I'm Michael Foote, project manager in San Luis Obispo and into Santa Barbara County as well with REACH.
Thank you for being on the call, which is one of our organizational partners in the Broadband Consortium. Bill, would you go ahead and introduce yourself? Do you need an introduction?
Simmons, down in Ventura County and coordinating Ventura County efforts primarily.
And then Tim, would you take a second to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Tim Tierney, doing mapping and GIS support for the consortia.
Fantastic. We are a growing team, so we'll have some new introductions for you next month as well. Right. So I'm going to hand it over to Michael to give a little update on the broadband internet caseworkers.
Yeah, just a very quick update on this pretty cool new program. Some of you probably are already using it. If you're not, just something to keep on radar. Really, there's caseworkers now that you can request meetings with, and then are also pushing forward some really helpful tools. So, just recommend that you check these out. There's a seminar series. There's data and mapping that will be probably growing as this program grows. and then really announcements to funding programs and hopefully some white papers coming. I think that piece is still TBD, but I would just say it's a great resource, and the more we can start tapping it, again, the more information we can start sharing with each other as well. So I think that's all I've got, unless I missed anything vital, Shelby.
I think so. Has anyone on the call already contacted the CPUC broadband internet caseworkers? I'm very curious. Someone rushing to unmute or hand.
Sounds like we should paste that email in the chat so people can.
Thanks.
Shelby, I did early on just because, I have questions, and they were very quick and responsive. This was even before our meeting up in Santa Maria. And since then, the questions that I had were questions that everyone else had, and they've been answered throughout various meetings. So responsive from my standpoint.
Great. Thanks, John, for sharing that.
Yep.
Great. Well, good to know that they are responsive. It's the least that we can know. It's that they're responsive and accurate. All right. Another piece I just want to put on everyone's radar is that we are tracking the BEAD funding process as the continued applications are not applications, but initial proposals are developed by the states. If you don't know, or as a reminder, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration is administering the BEAD program, which was created under the Infrastructure Act. They allocated just about $1.8 billion to the state of California in June which will be deployed, which will be administered in the state of California by CPUC, and which will it seeks to provide last mile connections to unserved, underserved, and community anchor institutions in the state of California. In the CPUC's funding update meeting in early July, they indicated that initial assessments here look like all the funding, all $1.8 billion will be required to meet our unserved population needs. And they do not foresee there will be additional funds to reach underserved or community anchor institutions. Unserved means that the location is not receiving broadband access at speeds of 25 megabits per second download speeds and 3 up. Any unserved location that is funded will need to meet 100 download speeds. Underserved means that it's between 25 and 100 download speeds, and community anchor institutions are eligible if they are not receiving gigabit speed, I believe. And again, we don't know what will happen quite yet. We are tracking. I did want to share that the CPUC is required to submit a statewide 5-year action plan. That 5-year action plan went out for public comment. The public comment was due on August 11th from eligible commenters. You have to be subscribed to their process in order to be part of that commenting process. And they will submit their final report, their initial 5-year plan on August 27th is their target deadline to NTIA. That 5-year plan is sort of the framework for the initial proposal. This is the BEAD initial proposal the state is required to submit. That needs to be submitted by the end of the year. NTIA will review that initial proposal, make sure it meets all of the requirements of their NOFO, and then will either approve or disapprove, send it back for additional information, and then the states will be able to really start shaping the BEAD program in 2024. We are tracking the BEAD challenge process right now. So NTIA put out a whole volume of guidance on developing a statewide challenge process for the BEAD program. This is different than the FCC challenge process, which occurred, or is, I guess, ongoing, but really any submissions that were submitted before January 2023 really influenced the map, the FCC maps as they sit right now, which determined the state allocations of funding. So now the state of California is required to align its own internal BEAD challenge process to verify locations that will be eligible to receive BEAD funding. So similar to, creating the maps, the public map that's being used for FFA now, has locations on it. This is what will verify locations that are eligible for BEAD, this process. They did use the FCC updates for state allocations. They did use them to determine the specific spots on the map that are eligible for funding. One of the differences with this process is that challengers can only be local government, nonprofits, and service providers. So end consumers cannot challenge the BEAD location eligibility. The timeline will be set by the state, and it has to be aligned with NTIA's requirement of 120 days from their initial opening of the challenge process. If you want to learn more from the NTIA perspective, I popped the YouTube link to their recorded video here in the corner. The 5-year action plan, I'm working on getting a link to it. It's kind of buried in their websites. And so I will be able to share that information out. We'll probably send it out in the newsletter so that you at least can review the 5-year action plan copy. And again, that will develop into the initial proposal. There is a process for community engagement around that proposal that we'll be able to share out as well in the newsletter. So keep BEAD on your radar. It's not happening in 2023, but there are some things that are happening that we can do to prepare for it. Oop. That one doesn't go there, sorry. So I wanted to sneak us into our roundtable discussion and open it up for everybody on the call to share some information about how they are reacting to the middle mile map updates, any impacts they're seeing in their communities on potential FFA applications. What I'll do first is throw up the middle mile maps as they sit. Again, at the Middle Mile Broadband Advisory Committee meeting, the day after our last BCPC meeting, they did announce some changes to that map, which are pretty significant. I will share that out. Does anyone have first impressions that they want to share? BCPC, do you have anything you want to say outright while I'm lining up this map?
I'll just go ahead and chip in and say that when we started talking middle mile, we really saw the utility and imperative to connect all cities in the 3 counties to one another. We wanted 2 points of entry so there'd be redundancy, and we wanted loops so that if one side went down in terms of coming into a community with open access in middle mile, the other side could pick it up. And so it's just good network design. And what you'll see and what Shelby will talk about is the fact that we're falling really far, far short of that design and that objective. And so, I keep getting on my soapbox and saying everything has got to be local. Yeah, I think it's a time for us as local communities to go shoot the gaps, to start developing plans that are going to be much more robust and useful than what's coming from the state for our regions. And so that's my 2 cents.
Thanks for kicking us off there, Bill. So this is the updated middle mile map. I wish I would have coordinated earlier, but I don't have a copy of the old map. I have, you can still see this. I have some older slides that showed the very initial designs for the middle mile Golden State Network. This was their first attempt. This is sort of, if you see the upper left corner here, that's more of our Ventura County leading into LA County. You can see these big full loops, really aspirational loops. And then if we move up to region 3, that's where we see some San Luis Obispo and some Santa Barbara, but again, they didn't really, don't have a picture of the full capture. But you can see some really big broad loops going through our counties and sort of tendrils raining down on all of our vertical or north-south highways. And then what you can see here is that that's changed pretty significantly. So we've lost a few solid tendrils coming down. Some of these loops are no longer going to close in the statewide middle mile map. The orange pathways are phase 1. The pink is phase 2. They have delegated a phase 2 to the process because they are not certain that they're going to have enough funding for all of their potential builds. And so they have prioritized or budgeted what they can do in phase 1. Almost all of the builds in our 3 tri-county area will actually be IRUs. IRUs are indefeasible rights of use. That means that Caltrans isn't going to be building it, and it won't be owned and operated by the state agencies. It will be leased from a provider on a long-term lease. So I think they mentioned up to 30 years per lease agreement with the option to extend. And there will still be fiber that is dedicated to the statewide middle mile in all of these builds. So it will be allocated to the needs of the statewide middle mile. So I want to open it up. Yeah, Chris, thank you for jumping in.
So question for you. You know, we were in Santa Barbara County pretty disappointed to see that they removed the 154 route because that's a key component to provide resiliency in our county. What I'm curious is, you know, as I believe it's CDT that are making these decisions, are they speaking with anyone in these counties to gather input as they make these decisions? Because it doesn't seem like it. It seems like they're just, you know, not necessarily really aware of the priority areas in these counties, but just making decisions, and I could be wrong, but just based solely on financial decisions, not necessarily resiliency or priority, you know, areas. So just wondering if you have any insight on that.
I don't have insight on that. What I do know is that the original proposal that they wanted to build that included the 154 changed because of financial reasons. So I think that the engagement that they did very briefly at the end of our June 1st digital equity meeting, I think that's what they considered to be their local engagement. I don't know that for a fact. If anyone on the call has information about this, please feel free to jump in and share. We only know what we know at the Broadband Consortium. So please, if you've had other conversations, please jump in. But at this point, I think it is, I'm guessing financial as well.
Yeah, on the Ventura County side and on the Moore Park side, we were in touch with GSN and state CDT folks. The meetings and discussions were not specific to, hey, we're looking at removing this area or that area or keeping this is more important, less important. It was more, hey, we have ways we can help each other. Let's talk about that. And at least in the conversations that I was part of, you know, there were verbal things like saying, yes, we're doing this, or no, we're not doing that. So there was some conversation, but not on that specific topic.
Yeah, not about necessarily top priorities that we want to submit to CDT, but on plans that the County of Ventura already intended to deploy. Is that right? Did I get that right, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was that, or the possibility of, hey, if they joint trench or joint build, does that change, you know, their financial decisions that CDT is, you know, deciding on? But it was not like, I mean, to use the example that Chris had, it was not like, hey, what happens if we take out the 154 route? It was not like that. I will say from Moore Park standpoint, I mean, that the easterly of the 2 purple lines of Ventura County is, the south end of that is Moore Park. From our standpoint, we're actually really happy that the east-west line is still in there because that will enable us to meet our broadband goals. The purple is highly desirable, but not required for us to take our next steps. and that it is in a phase 2 and not in a not going to ever be done, that's still an overall win for us.
I think another mystery that we still want to drill down into a little bit too is, there are significant savings from phase 1, right? By eliminating certain legs and delegating some to phase 2. Something I'm still curious about is the use of the savings. Are they being reinvested within the county that they were saved from, or is it a network-wide redistribution of savings? So that's another answer I don't know, and I'm really curious about.
Hey, this is Will Morat with Magellan Broadband. I don't know that there's really savings. I think it was just simply just based on the conversations that we've had over the past months. I think it was just simply there wasn't enough money to build everything that they wanted.
Yeah.
And so one of the other big changes I saw on the map with respect to phase 1 was they're not all new builds any longer. You can tell a lot of them that they've gone out and they've found existing circuits and leased those from private carriers or perhaps other public agencies, rail lines. And so the routing changed quite a bit on the phase 1. And so I think this is really about them trying to manage within the budget that they have and say, we can't afford to build everything. Let's lease as much as we can. And then we still don't quite have enough. So we're going to have to pull out some things to a phase 2.
That sounds pretty accurate.
Shelby. I took a photo of the middle mile network as presented on the June 1st meeting in Atascadero, and I emailed that to you if you want to put it up.
Oh, do you actually do you want to share it from your computer?
Well, you know what? You're already sharing, and I emailed it to you. If that, I can share it if you like.
It might be faster.
All right, give me a moment to get that picture up.
Let's see what's faster.
Okay, I'll share it. Okay, Shelby, see that?
Yeah.
All right, let me zoom in on Santa Barbara. Okay, so I'll let you continue to do the narration though, Shelby, if you want to point out the differences.
Well, first difference, I guess, a couple of differences that I want to point out, and let's start in the north in San Luis Obispo County. You can see that actually in San Luis Obispo County, they have actually added a phase 2 line along that sort of connects a loop parallel to this 101 stretch up to Highway 1, which is kind of an interesting addition up north of that.
And I'm hovering over that, making mouse circles. That's what you're referring to, right, Shelby?
A little north of that. Yeah, I believe that I saw an additional phase 2 kind of rerouting up there. If we go down to Santa Barbara County, we are happy to see that they did keep the 166 on. So that was something we were concerned about, that they were removing 166 that seeks to connect us to Kern County and goes through the Cuyama Valley, which is a community that doesn't have internet. So we are pleased with that. However, what they've done is they've decided to go around the outer edge along Highway 101, likely along the railroad tracks along the coast of Santa Barbara, and then delegated the 1 to 135 down to Los Alamos stretch as phase 2. Removed the 101 to 154 to 246 stretch. That whole stretch is just completely removed. And they are now choosing to just route across what we think it will likely be an IRU through the railroad tracks along 101. And then in Ventura County, let's see, you guys are testing my memory here. I believe that really what changed in Ventura County is that this 23 route was relegated to phase 2. as was the 33 to 150. Was there something else that changed on this 101 route? I'm not convinced that there's something changed there.
We're pretty skeptical of when that 101 route's going to get put in. I mean, it's just, it's nice to go along that route. It's a nice route to have, but it takes an awful lot of time to get those kinds of infrastructure changes on major thoroughfares like that.
Yeah. Well, and ideally it has to be spent by 2026, right? Aren't we on a time crunch?
Yep.
Part of it as well.
Hi,
So-
this is John Meredith. While you're looking at the map, one of the issues that we have at our county anyways, is following that 101 up along the railroad tracks, is that everyone else does too. And it's a point of failure. So if there's a number of train crossings, bridge crossings, and so on. And these could all be subject to various issues in the coming years. And not only would we go down, but so would everyone else. Taking that 154 off the route we just need to try to get it back on. That's, I can't emphasize that enough.
Well, and thank you for sharing that. I have had a couple conversations. I invited a couple of folks who are in sort of industry partners who do more design and engineering, who are less bothered, I think, than staff are, municipal staff, because they say, you know, these areas are going to get built in privately, more likely. And if they end up using some government funds, you know, there are requirements for plugging into the open access ports, and there are requirements for under some funding sources for sharing that. So I do hear some optimism. I'm just sharing what I've heard, some optimism from private partners as well. But continually stating this 154 build is really expensive. And that it is, you know, something that potentially would need to be like a multi-partner coordination.
So what's really interesting about the 154 build is I know that Frontier is on the 154 almost, well, just past Paradise Road, and that's coming toward the peak, if you will. And it's the area in Painted Cave that is the more than likely the most expensive piece of that whole 154. So if they're already leasing up the coast to the 101, or that's what they're considering, then they should consider the same thing down the 154 and then just have a small build out through the Painted Cave through San Marcos Pass. So that's, you know, we're not talking about the whole 154. We're actually talking about a very small area off of the 154 that they have to put in some money into this. So it's not as big as we think.
And I don't know if we have anyone from Frontier on the call today. Sometimes we get a representative. No, it doesn't look like someone from Frontier is on the call today to opt in or to join in the conversation.
And the point that John's making here is, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, is, you know, does CDT, are they aware of all this, right? Are they making decisions with local knowledge of what is in each county? They may not know all this information. And so at the end of the day, they may think that by taking the 154 out, they're saving a lot of money. But the reality is, if they were fully aware of everything that's there, it may not be a cost savings for them. And it's, you know, from our standpoint, it's way more important to have that connection than it is to use existing connections that are already there. Doesn't address the resiliency issue.
No, it doesn't.
Shelby, I'll just jump in. And I know Chris, we've been talking with Chris and John a lot, and we are looking up there. We're trying to figure out if we can make a build up there work. I am certainly not promising anything on this call, but as you said, it's a hard build. John, you're not wrong about Frontier and some of their assets up there. Their assets up there are very old from what I understand, and I haven't seen any evidence that that's high on a priority list for them. But Chris, I guess long and short of it, I'm hoping to have more information for you soon. And I feel like we keep saying that, but as we dive in more, we find more things we have to analyze. So we'll talk.
I appreciate it, Kirsten.
But you also know that whatever this initial analysis, we want to keep working with you on it. So right now we're just looking at FFA funds and what is doable for an application in the next few weeks, but that's not going to end our trying to figure out how to get up there.
Thank you, Kirsten. Anyone else want to have any comments on the middle mile changes? Anyone in San Luis Obispo have any thoughts? Is 46 relegated to phase 2 to a maybe?
The only thing that I would add on behalf of Santa Barbara County, and I'm looking at Carrie Gray, is this sure really does stress even more the importance of the North County fiber ring that we've been talking about for years, that some planning is now going into. I mean, anything we can do to move that initiative along is very, very important, because we really do have holes up in that area, and we're going to need it. And go. That's all I can say.
Absolutely, Bill. We just threw up. We were so close to, some of our stuff was 90, 100% done until the 21st of July. And then we threw everything up, and now we're relooking at everything. We're back down to 80% in some cases, completing the study that we wanted to have done by next month. So we're working really hard to relook at some possibilities, but doesn't look good with 154. I know there's some discussion to meet with the county to discuss the 154. We're hoping to do that in the next week or two. Keep you posted on that.
Larry, can you actually fill in anyone on this call that doesn't know what the North County Fiber Ring project is? Just a brief overview, because there's some people who may or may not.
Quick overview. The Chumash Indians and the Econ Alliance of Northern Santa Barbara County received a $444,000 grant from Department of Commerce, EDA, Economic Development Administration, to look at the existing fiber that's in North County, to look at what the ISPs plan to deploy based upon permits, and then to develop a dual ring based upon the 10,000 miles that were going to come through the state, including 154, 101, Highway 1, all those 166, those preliminaries, trying to get as close to the unserved and the underserved as possible with the dual ring, looking at 3 governance models for these proposals, and try to have a plan and a cost developed by September, early October, on what it would cost in the future to try to use the existing fiber from the cities and the county, using what the ISPs were planning to put in, and where we needed to plan for future development. And that was what the business analysis was all about, and continues now. But obviously, a lot of it's up and for discussion right now. So I hope that's a good summary, Shelby.
Yeah.
Hey, Shelby, it's Lisa Ludovici with Charter. And I would just say, in terms of San Luis Obispo, Charter already has service along those purple lines.
Mm-hmm.
So we're serving Grover and Napomo. We're serving Morro Bay. We come down the 1. We're going out as far as Cambria, and partially into San Simeon. And then we have quite a bit of the 46 served already. So just, just so folks on the phone know.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the phase 2, this sort of phase 2 legs, haven't
We're also on,
aren't
we're also
completely
along-
unserved.
yeah, we're also along phase one, so
Yeah.
along the 101, but
Oh.
yeah, so
A lot
yeah,
of it is
we
about
serve all of-
duplication.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Shelby.
I was going to say, and a lot of their plan is about having a little bit of duplication also. But it's really great to hear that it's not completely barren out there. And I think Christy also had a comment to share. And I'm curious how if that information impacts what you're thinking about, Christy, who mentioned losing Highway 1 and 46 in San Luis Obispo makes applications and planning significantly more challenging. Are phase 2 parts of the map still eligible to be considered for applications? And if we're referring to the FFA funding, I have asked questions of CPUC about the preference for connection to the middle mile now that some of these middle mile stretches have been removed, and they have given me a sort of cagey answer, which is basically remember that you're only competing against other people in your own county for the funding, the FFA funding. So I think they're essentially saying, well, nobody's going to get those points. So it's not really a detriment to you if you can't connect to the statewide middle mile, right? So for those of you that don't know, the FFA last mile account applications award a certain, I think 10 points if you are connected into the statewide middle mile, if your plans to connect into the statewide middle mile. So they essentially said, like, we can't change that requirement, but also if nobody can do it, then you're not going to lose points. In the meeting that they had, I think it was July, the day after our last meeting, July 21st meeting, thank you. They did say that indicate that there would be some accommodation for applications, and that they would try to get as close as they could, somehow tie them in. That was an offhand comment. It was not part of their presentation. So I don't know how valid that is, but it is on the recording of the July 21st meeting. So Christy, did that answer your question? Do you want to unmute? Does Lisa's information provide you any more resolution to that?
Sorry, I think there's several of us kind of attached to Christie's.
Oh, I was like, you're not Christy.
I know. Hopefully I don't look like Christy. In a way, yes. I had a follow-up question. If some of these phase 2 sections aren't planned for or aren't funded, which it sounds like, in the last mile application, we can apply to extend middle mile as well. Are those phase 2 areas then off limits for us to apply to extend ourselves?
I don't think I understood the question. Tell me one more time.
Can we apply to extend the middle mile in that FFA grant if it's planned for in phase 2, or are those off limits then?
It's not off limits. No, they're separate, right? So this is the CDT's plan to build the statewide middle mile. The FFA applications are to support private industry to reach areas that would otherwise not be reachable. There are some FFA applications being planned in our Tri-County area that are incorporating a middle mile stretch in order to reach the last mile community that needs to be served. So it's definitely allowable in the FFA applications. You have to make the case for why you need middle mile funding as well.
Yeah, definitely there are sections of the 46 and the one, a lot of sections further out that are unserved and not currently served.
Yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else you want to touch on this?
Shelby, quick question for you that I don't know if you're going to know the answer, but thinking about these stretches that are the least, what is it, IRU, is that the right term?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Has the state given any indication of how they're going to do potential tie-ins Because if they're using conduit underneath, like along the 101 underneath the railroad tracks, I mean, those are not, that's not easy to tie into. And it's not, I mean, you can't have a whole bunch of different tie-in. I mean, you could in theory, but then that also creates risk in the run. I'd just be curious how they're thinking about that.
Well, the answer I've heard, that specific question wasn't asked about, being under the railroad tracks, but the answer I've heard is that they will do their best to accommodate any requests for tie-ins, because it's open access. And so their answer has been, a little vague. We'll do our best to tie you in, but yes, I'm
Like,
sure
I've
that
heard
there
that-
will have to be designated points, right? Because it would be
Yeah.
silly to have.
I've heard that too, and that makes sense on something that they are building as new build. I just question how that is going to work and how much flexibility there could realistically be if they're leasing existing fiber. And in some areas, it may not be an issue, but in other areas, it could quickly become problematic.
Well, I know that that's part of their IRU agreement, right? Is that they have X number of access points. Because this is going to be designated statewide to the statewide middle mile of that fiber. So I know that that's part of their negotiations. I don't know about the actual physical construction though.
Yeah, and that's going to be where the rubber hits the road on existing
Right.
conduit and fiber. And
Anyone else have any insight into that conversation, to that question? Well, I'm taking a note of it, and if I have an opportunity to ask it, I think it's a good one to try to nail down. Okay, well, just so we don't have a lot of dead air here, I do want to move on to the next agenda item unless anyone has any closing comments or anything they want to share out.
Just wanted to maybe tie a bow around it and react to Kirsten's comment. You can all sense the evolving nature of this thing. The rules have changed 2 or 3 times in the last 24, 36 months. And yeah, there was structure in terms of where the access points were going to be. But Kirsten, you're absolutely correct. When you're talking about leasing long haul fiber, it does not lend itself to just creating an access point anywhere along the railroad tracks or up and down what is meant for long haul. And so how that's going to work, I don't know if that's a good question. I'm not sure if those rules have been established yet. And I think that we're going to have to figure it out as we continue to use the metaphor. We're building a plane that's already taken off and it's flying. And I think that that's just going to be something that we continue to talk about and have to figure out as this thing unfolds.
Thanks, Bill. That was a great little sum up for the end of this conversation. So we're going to move on into some digital equity conversations to just sort of wrap into this meeting. Again, the Broadband Consortium for the Pacific Coast, we really have, again, evolved and taken the point that broadband deployment is important, but unless you're incorporating consideration of adoption and digital literacy and ongoing support, that construction and that infrastructure isn't actually reaching the end user the way that it needs to. So we do like to incorporate some digital equity conversations into our meetings so that everyone's aware of what's going on, right? It's important that people who are doing adoption work understand the background on the infrastructure and what the impact of the change on the middle mile is on their communities. But it's equally important that the people who are designing and engineering and building these builds are also aware of the longer vision needs and of the work that's being done to actually support the end user in adopting and utilizing this technology to then improve their own circumstances. So I'm very pleased to introduce Amy Gonzalez from UCSB and her team, Laurent Wang and Yiwang Kim, who are here to talk to us a little bit about a project that they received funding for, that they're starting work on, that they started work on already this summer. Amy?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll try to be brief. I really appreciate all of the work that everyone is doing, and it's so exciting to always be a part of an initiative when suddenly there's a bunch of funding available, right? Which is not something that often folks in digital equity research have been able to say, or not always been able to say historically. And as Shelby noted, a lot of my research, or a lot of the work that I've been doing, has focused on access to technology and the stability of individual access to technology, especially in low-income households. What happens when people can't consistently pay their bills? What happens when their computers break and they don't have the money to fix them? And so I really landed on this work when I, realized in so many surveys done by Pew and others, when asked, do you have the internet, access to the internet? Do you have a computer? People would say yes to those things. And then when I would talk to them, you would realize that they weren't really functional, right? They weren't at speeds that were functional. They weren't devices that were functional. And so what does that mean? How do we help kind of close those types of gaps? And so in that vein, I'm particularly interested right now in a project related to tech support. I'm interested in the ways that a lot of this funding, or some of this funding that's coming through NTIA and other sources, might help build tech support resources, build up existing tech support resources at places like the library or local nonprofits, but also might yield new hotlines or a digital navigator kind of standalones. And so I'm really just kind of introducing myself here. My graduate student, Laurent Wang, is also here, and he's doing work in this area. And we just wanted to kind of give a heads up that we might be reaching out to some of you, especially those of you that are in the nonprofit sector, to see if you'd be willing to talk to us. We're actually going to be doing interviews with the various organizations that might do this kind of work to get a sense of kind of what's working and what's not, broadly with respect to digital equity, and also specifically as it affects tech support. And then ultimately, we're hoping to collect some data in the region with kind of consumers, low-income consumers. So if that's something that you would like to be a part of, feel free to reach out to me. I'll drop my email in the chat, and know that we might also reach out to you in the coming weeks to see if you'd be willing to spend some time with us to help us better understand and kind of get a lay of the land here when it comes to what our digital equity needs are. I think that's about it, but if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. Otherwise, like I said, I'll drop my email in here. And just want to say thanks again for your time.
And I want to clarify for the Zoom room here, is this geographically specific to Santa Barbara County? This is a tri-county call.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Shelby. And I don't think we haven't definitively kind of determined the limits. So I think right now we're kind of open to everyone. It kind of depends. I think we're going to start in the county and then broaden out, but certainly we can find partners or people that are really interested in kind of sharing their resources and their knowledge really with us is what I mean by resources, just letting us understand what's going on for you. I think we're happy to talk to anyone in the Tri-County area.
And so I would invite anyone on the call from San Luis Obispo County or Ventura County, if you're not part of the nonprofit world, but you know of the really active digital navigators and folks who are out there in the community supporting adoption and enrolling folks in ACP, to drop some different names. If you don't have the contact information, maybe we can work together to find that. But if you have recommendations, feel free to drop those in the chat as well. I think that'd be a great asset.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the last thing I just wanted to say is, as a researcher interested in digital equity, and I haven't been in the region that long, and COVID made it even harder to work with local partners, but I always want to also just try to kind of offer my services as a researcher to see if there's ways that I can form kind of partnerships more broadly that might fit needs that you have that maybe haven't occurred to me. One of the reasons I love working with local community groups is because that's where I learn what the real problems are, right? People who have their boots on the ground. And so if there are other questions that maybe I didn't mention in this kind of summary project, but you kind of would like some help or insights into how to do some evaluations or are interested in data on a particular digital equity topic. I don't know that I'll be able to have those answers, but I'm certainly willing to have those conversations and see what I can do. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Shelby.
Right. And up next, I am happy to welcome Eleanor Gardner, who is going to share some information about Cox Communications digital equity plan that they have developed.
Great. Hi, everyone. Shelby, thank you so much for having us and including us in today's presentation. I know many folks on this call, but for those I don't know, I sit in Santa Barbara on the Public and Government Affairs team for Cox, and we serve many pockets in Southern California, but in Santa Barbara, our footprint spans from Carpinteria to Goleta. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, can everyone see that PowerPoint? Great. So just wanted to give a little slice into the work that we're doing on all things digital equity in Santa Barbara. Amy, I would love to connect with you and talk more about ways that we can collaborate with your research project. But here in Santa Barbara, we are doing a multi-pronged approach to bridge the digital divide from the ISP provider perspective. At a very high level, you'll see these three tiers. The first being the ACP monthly subsidy, which I know many of you are very familiar with. We've been doing a lot of work to get that resource out to eligible households and community members so that they can take advantage of this subsidy. On Cox's end, we have a variety of affordable internet tiers, and I'll dive more into those in detail, but we really are trying to hit as many areas of the population that could benefit from these low cost plans. And then lastly, a few other tools that we've been sharing. Our Digital Academy, which is a series of free video tutorials on all things digital literacy, using your device effectively, navigating the internet safely. And this Digital Academy is available to anyone for free. I'll also dive into partnership enablement and the partnership that we have created nationally with the Boys and Girls Club as well. So on our programs, our internet programs themselves, Connect to Compete was actually founded over 20 years ago, right here in Santa Barbara. The model was with Computers for Families, the County Education Office, and now serves as the model for our nationwide Connect to Compete tier, which is $9.95 a month for households with K through 12 students at home. We've been doing a lot of outreach and partnering with our school districts to make sure that every eligible family in our footprint has access to this resource. During COVID, we were actually able to expand our low-cost offerings and launched Connect Assist. Really, the only difference between Connect Assist and Connect to Compete is that K through 12 student living at home. So anyone who's eligible and without a student at home would qualify for this program. And most recently, we launched Straight Up Internet, which is a prepaid monthly service as well. So on top of all of our own programs, we of course have been partnering with the federal government on the ACP. So eligible households can enroll in both a Cox program and the ACP and apply it together to get free internet in some cases. The Digital Academy I mentioned, it's a series of videos that we're constantly building out in both English and Spanish. And like I said, is available to anyone. And we encourage you to peruse this site. We've been seeing great success in school districts actually using some of these resources in their newsletters to parents, especially on social, emotional learning and setting healthy boundaries with technology and internet as well. So lastly, I just wanted to talk about partnership enablement. It's really the key to success that we've been seeing to get these low cost resources out to the community. You can see the wide net that we've cast, everything from the county, municipalities, and various agencies under their jurisdiction to nonprofits, to school districts, and recently working with some healthcare and hospital systems as well, especially as telehealth becomes increasingly necessary for various folks in the community to get connected and get services. So this is a call to action for all of you. We would love to partner with you if we haven't already. So please do reach out to myself or to Kirsten, who's also on this call. We would love to chat more and discuss ways that we can make our various resources, the ACP, the digital literacy tools, even more available to more community members. So we'll drop our contact information in the chat. It's also linked in this presentation, which we can share out after the fact as well. But really, we are all about partnership and all ears and are eager to work together to get even more folks connected to these resources. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Does anyone have any questions about the different prongs of their digital equity plan? One thing I would love to point out is this emphasis on building partnerships. Something we really think is important in the consortium is the understanding that we are, we hope that these meetings and that our newsletters and the information we're sharing is going to be able to connect you to other people who are maybe at the other end of your work, right? And so building those partnerships, nurturing them, continuing to reach out to us and ask us, if you're solving a problem, maybe one of us knows somebody that we can connect you to that's actually addressing a similar problem. So we have been working to develop across the Tri-Counties digital equity coalitions, and we've been working with partners in each county to track what's going on in terms of digital equity conversations. The DEC in Ventura County has taken a summer hiatus, as has the DEC in Santa Barbara County, planning to come back to everybody and the partnerships and networks that have been built out in the fall. But San Luis Obispo County did not slow down over the summer. So I was hoping Annie, who's on the call, could share a little bit about the DE roundtable that they held yesterday. Just any highlights or information you want to share about what's going on in San Luis Obispo County?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, happy to share. And I think I'm in the similar boat to a lot of people in that I'm very new to the broadband world. I've been at SLOCOG for about 4 months now, so kind of chipping away on all of that. But I'm happy to give you a visual of the presentation itself. We had a Marina, I'm blanking on her last name, from the NTIA, gave us a wonderful kind of breakdown of funding from the BEAD and the CPUC. So let me share my screen super quick. And it was kind of the highlight. Can everyone see this?
Nope.
Can everyone see that? Oh.
Yeah, now we can see it.
Oh, perfect. So let's see. This is this is her main thing, and I'm happy to share this presentation with the group. So kind of just the grant breakdown and basically the timeline of everything. So she got very, very specific as far as kind of the funding and also what specifically was the divide between the two, the CDT along with the CPUC, and also shared that she's very available to answer multiple questions for everyone. So of course, I'm sure many people have kind of seen this process, and as you guys were discussing earlier, the 5-year plan It's kind of in the process. There's still comment going on. And then she also went on to share to make sure that the complete coverage was going on. And then one question I actually had for you guys, if I'm sorry to divert the conversation, but this was the map we were presented, if anyone can see this. And just for my own knowledge, could I ask the difference between the map? I believe this would be an older map than what you guys were presenting today. Is that the case?
Yeah, this does
Okay.
look the original design. Do you have a source for this one?
I do not specifically. Maria Kelly was discussing the map, so she gave me this information. But I was just wondering, and I'm happy to follow up with her. But I just wanted to confirm. And then we also had Michael, who was on the call. We had an update on some BCPC updates. So SlowCog, we're kind of still looking to find our space within the broadband community, but definitely I think we're leaning more toward a focus of digital equity and kind of finding a potential appropriate grant that we could go after. So that's kind of the goal for SlowCog at the moment. And I will put this presentation in the chat, and hopefully that was a good overview, but once again, I'm still very new to this whole world. So thank you.
For the overview. To clarify, I think that map might actually be, the middle mile part was perhaps from old information, but the opportunity areas might be from the North County study that was done by Pasarolas and Atascadero.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it might actually
it was
be
a
a
more
very
local
valid
focus.
map. I don't want to undermine the validity of it.
Yeah, not at all.
So it did look like there were opportunity areas that I think overlap with what was presented for the North County project, North Slow County project, not the North Santa Barbara County project. Well, thanks, Annie, and it's wonderful to welcome you into the space.
Yeah.
So happy to have you here. It's interesting what's happening at SlowCog because it sort of diverges from what the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments and the Ventura County Organization of Governments do. They are focused a little bit more on the infrastructure deployment. So it's just always interesting to hear across the counties, how the work gets distributed and how important it is to have these conversations across organizations to see like where does it really fit in. So we appreciate you engaging with that question and really looking at all the options.
Oh, you're very welcome. And a lot of the local jurisdictions are doing a wonderful job as well. So it's a lot, and one answer leads to more questions, but everyone's doing a wonderful job. So
as it happens, right? Well, I wanted to open it up to any additional updates that anyone wants to share. We went through these slides. We're at the time of roundtable discussion. If anyone has something they'd like to share, an update you want to get feedback about, this is sort of the content that we had planned for the meeting. So,
hi, this is Christy from Ranch Wi-Fi, and I just have actually a question about the last mile grant we're applying for. So we have a CPC and application pending. Do you know, since that's pending, do we still need to do the letter of credit requirement?
what I do know, I can ask this question specifically to CPUC. However, what I do know is that those applications are being evaluated by two separate groups within CPUC. My prediction is that the answer will be yes, complete your application and submit all of the things that are requested for each application.
So submit the letter of credit, even though okay. Thank
because
you.
They're actually being evaluated by two different teams.
Gotcha. Okay.
Even though you would hope that they're sitting in the same building and offices next to each other, I'm not sure that that's how this is shaking.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Great question. Anything else anyone want to share? I'm an online teacher, so I'm okay with dead air if anyone wants to wait.
At the risk of sounding like a broken record, I'm going to chip in once again about the evolving nature of things. We've had a number of discussions as a team this week about maps, the validity of maps and the problems with some maps. And, once again, local ground truth is really the only answer, and so what we're finding as we look at all these maps, especially the ones for FFA, is that there's still not good fidelity of what every neighborhood, what every house is needing or looking like. And there's an awful lot of these dots that don't represent reality, ground truth today. And so I can't emphasize enough the importance of this group, because I don't know where else this conversation is occurring. We really do have to have these local conversations and come up with our local solutions, and then push back up and make sure that, we can send a message that the maps that we create, the data that we do validate is ground truth. And it's because we are the locals and we know. And the groups and the coalitions and everything that we've put together is making the difference, and you can count on it. So the more we do this, the more inspired I get. It's a very interesting time, and I just can't say enough for everybody coming together to work on this together. I also didn't mention VCOG, and I probably could give a little update on that. We did get the VCOG ladder grant. We will be convening a meeting in the next week, 2 weeks, the 31st, I believe, is what we're looking at for bringing in the public reps. And we'll be giving our first feedback to the VCOG board of what we do. This is a full year's effort of planning, very similar to what happened up in Santa Barbara County last year, but FFA's wrapped up into it, and a couple of other things. It's going to look very different than what happened in Santa Barbara County last year, but yet at the same time, we're going to try to go to the same place and achieve the same kind of coalition building that occurred there. But the evolving nature, FFA is there. I don't know how it's going to, with the maps and the problems we're having in the maps. I'm hoping the 29th deadline stays firm, but can't guarantee it today. They're talking about another round of FFA after the first of the year. We will certainly want to see how that works and how that plays. I don't think that this is going to be a one-size-fits-all in terms of FFA awards. I think there's going to be an awful lot of validation and alignment, and making sure that the right awards are going to the right places for the right reasons. And so how this is going to happen, I don't know just quite yet, but I think there's going to be a lot of discovery along the way. So just a heads up. Don't have all the answers, but we got to keep asking questions.
I saw it referred to today as an iterative process. So it is changing. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll sit on for a little bit longer, but if there are no more updates or questions, we'll give you back 19 minutes of your day. And thank you for coming, and hope to see you again next month.
Thanks, Shelby.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thanks, Shelby. Thanks, everyone.
everyone. Thanks, Shelby.
Thanks. Have a great day.